My name is Nkunda Felix.
I'm Robert Kirabo Nyonyintono.
It's glory for Uganda for the first time in history.
Anything in sports, join me.
Wake up to Good Morning Uganda, weekdays on UBC.
Live from Nile Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
The Vice President of the USA, that is the United States of America, is known as Kamala Harris, and she's the 49th Vice President of the USA. But she's not just the 49th President or Vice President of the USA. She's also the first woman to hold that position, the highest position in the USA land. She's also the first African-American lady to hold that same position, first African lady to hold that position, first Asian American to hold that position. There's so many firsts that come with Kamala Harris. But also, when her mother was raising her up, she told her that, Kamala, you may be the first to do so many things, but make sure you are not the last. Now, speaking of last, Uganda is not about to be the last country to have the female vice president. Second of its kind. The first female vice president was Specioza Kazue, and now, yesterday, Parliament confirmed Jessica Alupo as the official Vice President of the Republic of Uganda. Congratulations to you, Madam Vice President, and we're quite excited to a new Uganda that is forming under the leadership of the President and women that are going to guide him through. My name is Priscilla Nalwoga. Welcome to the 15th day of June 2021, and this is Good Morning Uganda. But I don't do this alone. Somewhere, somehow, Felix Nkunda is sipping on his African tea this morning. Good morning to you, Felix.
Good morning, Priscilla. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
You look awesome this morning, I must say.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, and of course, to you all our viewers out there, good morning. Hope you're well. Today is the 15th day, as did Priscilla say, and that makes it half the month of June. Now, again, that also means that we are definitely fast-tracking towards the end of this particular month, which will be mid this year. As Priscilla is talking about fasts, a lot of fasts, we'll be talking about a lot of mid, and this should be giving us reason to judge ourselves how far we've come in terms of those things that we desire to do, or those things we did plan to do. But today is another day. Definitely will also cause reminder to all our viewers out there that today COVID-19 is alive and thriving amongst our people. Now, we have lost many people. Families have lost loved ones, have lost fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, grandparents. At least you have been able to treat someone. Thank God that for those who are actually fine, Let's thank God that you have recovered. But for those who have not yet caught the virus, please work hard to make sure you do not get this coronavirus. Priscilla.
Well, surely may their souls rest in peace, and we pray that one day this will be written in the books of history and our great-grandchildren will be reading about it. Now, speaking of great-grandchildren, I do have a great-grandchild of Nyonyintono with us this morning. Joining us, Robert Kirabo. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, Felix. And good morning, our viewer. Thank you so much for deciding to begin your day with us. But I know that everybody, as you wake up, you have what you plan to do on a daily basis. But also, very importantly, one of the things that should be on your list is to ensure that you are well set to fight against COVID-19. And one of the things you must not forget is a sanitizer. Please ensure you leave home with a sanitizer and also a mask. Your biggest mission in this time should be getting home when you're safe and sound. People are dying. Families are losing people, like Felix said. And yesterday, I am one of the people that lost a person due to COVID-19. It's very shocking. Even the burial process is all very complicated. So let's go back to that primary school issue of prevention is better than cure. Just ensure you prevent yourself from contracting COVID-19.
Well, speaking of prevention better than cure, Felix, between steaming and taking the dawa teas that are being recommended, which one would you go for?
Both.
You'd go for both?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Speaking of both, there's a doctor in Mbarara who concocted the Covidex medicine. However, the National Drug Authority has not yet approved it and also denies any approval of it.
They are
though it's already on the market.
They are taking too long.
They're taking too long.
This is not the time for procedure, red tape, what? And that has been the argument, Priscilla, on all our lips. If there's some, for example, there's all these other local herbs. Instead of being there saying they will kill people, they will do what? If you have people who are experts, get the hell into the field. Let us know what's right, what's not wrong. Instead of being there and trying to pride in your offices, talking about we didn't approve, we didn't approve. You who didn't approve, what did you bring?
Robert, I know you're a person of who disregards, and you do appreciate the procedure, because at the end of the day, even if it's just the vaccine here, people have been skeptical of the vaccine and they've been arguing about the same thing. Is it approved? How safe is it? But then again, they're saying something different for the local herbs.
Well, we're in a desperate position. People are looking at anything that can save them. But also we must ensure that we do not get things that are harmful to our body. Because I want to remind you, when desperation kicks in, when HIV/AIDS has just come in Uganda, there was a lady called Nyonyintono. I think she was in either Mubende or Zimbabwe. These are stories I hear. So this lady came up and said she had soiled something that when people eat this, they will cure of HIV/AIDS. Desperation. People were getting loaded in vans, buses, going to Nyonyintono's place to eat just soil, funny soil. So much as we are desperate, we should follow procedure. Two wrongs do not make one right. You're going to consume herbs. Everyone is now selling something around, and these are going to be hazardous to your body.
Actually, I've been following some of these doctors locally, and they've been talking about the fact that, yes, you might want to adopt these local herbs that are being done within your communities, but please put it to consideration, especially for people who have pre-existing conditions. You may take one herb and it may affect your pre-existing condition in the sense that it will heighten it or reduce it. For example, people who have blood pressure, you will go steam with some leaves that you have gotten from Lord knows where, and they will decrease your blood pressure, giving you hypertension.
Let me just say this.
Yet, if you had consulted, even if you want to use it, but still, first consult from the medical personnel and ask them. They've told me to use this manya akakola kachi.
No, let me give you the latest example that I witnessed. There is this, opium enjaga. So people have been recommending it. That is one of the things that help people boost the immune system and fight disease. But remember, when you're taking these local herbs, you do not have the right dosages given.
That is
so true. There's a place in Gaba, it is called Mulungu, that's what they call herbal tea. So people are being told herbal tea, this is going to boost. When people took this, they went off.
Too much of anything is
Some
bad.
couldn't walk.
Felix.
So when the ministry says, please, let's take time.
I'm just wondering what people are talking about, honestly.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Let me tell you. That whole, and the Baganda, I'll use a traditional word, the kajanja. of you people who think they have studied medicine and what. I don't know about you people, but where I grew, I'll tell you, I never went to hospital when I had terrible cough. There's something called a chewamala that used to cure me, and I don't remember being high. My grandmother used to tell me, in the morning, by midday I would be fine. We grew up drinking mururuza, bombo. You know how these things work. When you have malaria, have a bad fever, go shower. By just a couple of minutes, these things we have been using since time immemorial. It is not now that they are going to go wrong. We do not have evidence that herbs have killed. Who have they killed? It is just speculation. And this is the time limit. For example, what you call steaming or kweyoteza. Who doesn't know the benefits of kweyoteza? Why do you think they put kids in chogero? Which UNBS has checked chogero? which UNBS has checked chogero?
Well,
but it is a known home appliance for kids, and the purposes are known. So why are you saying when I drink omrurus? How? You see, and this is the mystery. Let us, I don't know why people are shy to say the truth of the matter. When people here got even those throat congestions, you know the medicine. Gendo fune kalitunsi, tekamu, akakomera, tekamu, where you tezi. How do you say? When you have a wound, you know that kamunye does it. What has changed? I think these people just, you see this whole aspect of thinking that people have studied a lot to forget the things that actually raise them. How do you say food kills?
Well, nothing has changed. That's the fact. These things still exist and we still practice them. What we are simply saying is that too much of anything is bad, because while you are taking it for your malaria, it's affecting your liver. That is something that you may not know. Yeah, because I have tried like rosemary tea. I have tried it on a person who has pre-existing conditions and they were diabetic. And guess what? It actually increased their diabetic levels. But it is a rosemary, something that you pick up in your compound. So with that consideration, please make sure that you are sensitive to your health. Even if you're practicing these things, even if you're taking the ginger, the garlics, do not take them all week long. They will cause you hypertension for nothing. I know someone who actually got hypertension from taking a full glass, 1 full liter every single day, ginger, garlic. Every single day last year. They ended up having hypertension. So yes, while they are good and we do recommend them, we also do urge you, be sensitive to your life and be sensitive to your health.
Priscilla, lastly, please, let me just say this. You see, they're talking about the issue of quantities and all these things. And this is how black people, and in particular Africans, we lost pride in the things that we own. Baby, that's how they came telling you the gods you have are bad. Now we are here discussing the dangers. Do you know what causes actually what is called? You tell me, what is it attributed to? The things we eat, the foods we eat, the chips, the tinned what, the tinned what. No one is talking about that. Let's stop eating chips. Leave
Chirabo's chips alone.
You get the point. Let us talk about the true causes of diabetes. The true causes of diabetes are not local herbs.
Felix, we will continue this conversation.
To cut this discussion short, is yes, herbs are good, but at least have some consultation, because the quantities you might be taking may be hazardous to your life. And of course now people are very crafty. You'll even end up buying weeds that are totally poisonous and dangerous, because they are telling you these will help you again fight COVID-19.
And so, moving on swiftly, we get to remind you that Hallelujah ginger tea drink and tamarind drink are the very good options for you. Yes, they are natural and you can take them every single morning to just boost your immunity and see yourself healthy through this COVID-19 second wave. But speaking of second wave, we now move to our second phase of this morning, where we get to reflect to the last 24 hours and find out what are those stories that actually caught the attention of your social media platforms.
Well, we begin with Parliament, where we saw that is the vetting and the approval of the Vice President and the Prime Minister, where Parliament overwhelmingly voted to approve the appointment of Jessica Alupo as the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda. The motion was moved by Ruhinda North Member of Parliament Thomas Tayewa and seconded by Workers MP Charles Bakamulinde, which saw Alupo described as a dependable, and down-to-earth person. Alupa was approved alongside with the new Prime Minister Robin Nabbanja, both of whom expressed readiness to serve. Two records have been broken in Uganda's leadership history. This follows the recent appointment of two women to cabinet positions of Vice President and Prime Minister of Uganda. The motion was seconded by Workers MP Charles Bakabulinde and was also supported by other members of Parliament. Such reasons were not so different from those advanced towards parliamentary approval of Robin Nabbanja as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda. Minister for Information designate Dr. Chris Baryomunsi in his motion described the Kakumiro woman member of Parliament as a leader who is all-round. Overwhelmingly supported by the legislators, she was officially approved.
Away from that, the prisoners of politics have been released. The General Court Martial in March, India, before Lieutenant General Andrew Guti has finally released Eddie Sebufu, Elias Eddie Mutwe, Nubian Lee and 16 others on a non-cash bail of 20 million Ugandan shillings. The accused were, however, given stringent bail terms not to go beyond the premises of Kampala and Wakiso, and whoever attempts to do so, this will lead to automatic cancellation on bail. Prosecution led by Captain Ambrose Guma informed court of their intentions not to objecting to accused bail application on this as they left it to court's discretion. Talking to the press after the court, Godfrey Tudiamsima, counsel for the accused persons, was pleased with the court's ruling on bail, and we had Louis Rubongoye, National Unity Platform Secretary General, requesting court to release the other NUP supporters who are still pending with the similar offences in the same court.
Away from the court-martial, we now focus on COVID-19, where prices of local concoctions of home remedies in the fight against COVID-19 have been raised in urban markets in and around Kampala due to high demand of them as part of self-medication. According to vendors, the partial lockdown on inter-border crossing movements is bound to worsen the situation, since the rural areas are the biggest producers of these local concoctions. Unlike the first wave of COVID-19, the public has focused much on self-medication as the first line of treatment to counter the spread of COVID-19. Apparently, different sections of the public believe in different concoctions in the fight against COVID-19. A tour around different markets in Kampala, we ascertained that the alleged scarcity and skyrocketing prices of these concoctions indicates that the very prices and scarcity is determined by many people now resulting to these herbs. Will market vendors have taken the advantage of the public high demand for the concoctions, the partial lockdown on inter-district border movements as a contribution to these prices of these various herbs being sold in various markets?
Uganda prisons have expressed worry over the increase in COVID-19 numbers arising from inmates. The increase emerged from the arrests of people abusing the COVID-19 guidelines. Before the second wave of COVID-19, the numbers of inmates had reduced to about 40%. Today, prisons are overwhelmed with the increasing number of inmates that came with the partial 42 lockdown. Since courts have been partially closed, the Uganda prisons have set only 2 days, Tuesday and Thursday, to transport victims for hearing. Uganda prisons has also suspended visitation for a while as a way to curb the spread of COVID-19. Meanwhile, weekly trainings for regional prison commanders has set to begin as a campaign geared towards sensitization of prison wards on how to manage COVID-19 in prison detention facilities. A number of inmates infected with COVID-19 raised to 53. However, the prison mouthpiece Frank Baine says there is no cause for alarm since no death has been registered in prison facilities, contrary to earlier social media reports. Now, speaking of social media reports, on our Twitter handle, Ministry of Health is to install oxygen plant at Mulago Hospital in 2 weeks to counter oxygen shortages there. You'll find the details on our Twitter handle, which is at UBC TV Uganda. And we get to have more conversations, more updates on COVID-19, courtesy of our social media platforms. So if you want your live updates as and when they come in from the task force, from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and every concerned party, you can go to our Twitter handle at UBC TV and get those live updates. But follow us and continue the journey with us here on Good Morning Uganda by streaming live on our Facebook, UBC TV, and also UBC Television Uganda, which is our Twitter handle. Now, away from Uganda, Africa has also continuing conversation. So you do have Ethiopia that is in election times, and then the rest of the continent is also in dire need of help with COVID-19. But we do have Felix Nkunda with more of these stories.
Well, of course, we will look at international stories. Well, we will begin off where we see NATO coming out to warn military challenge posed by China there. Now, NATO leaders meeting for the summit in Brussels, have warned of the military threat that has been posed by China, saying its behaviors is a systematic challenge. And we see China did come out to say that it was rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal, was opaque about its military modernization, and which caused the cooperation military with Russia. And NATO chief, that is Jens Stoltenberg, was warned China, saying coming closer to NATO in military and technological terms. But he also came out to stress the alliance did not want a new Cold War with China. NATO is a powerful political and military alliance between 30 European and Northern American countries, which was established after World War II and in response to the threat of communist expansion. Now we'll be also looking at Belarus, where we see the authorities in Belarus who came out to make parade of the detained opposition blogger Roman Prozovic at a news conference in Minsk there. Now, at least where they gave their version of the rain plane diversion, which was on the 23rd of May, and the BBC reporter who was initially the media briefing says that Prozovic, the 26-year-old, clearly appeared under duress. Now, an alleged bomb threat forced the plane to land in Minsk, where passengers, which also contained this particular journalist and the girlfriend, were arrested. Belarus denies it was a forced landing, and they came out to make clarity, giving and saying that before his arrest, he said he feared a possible death penalty as he has been put on Belarus terrorism list, and he would anyway face a long prison sentence if found guilty of inciting unrest in Belarus. Now back to Africa, we're looking at Zambia's former president there, Kenneth Kaunda, admitted in hospital with very severe illness. Zambia's former president, Kenneth Kaunda, is receiving treatment for an undisclosed illness at a military hospital in the capital, that is Lusaka. His office has said as South African country battles a surge in COVID-19 cases. Now, the 97-year-old ruled Zambia from 1964 when the country won its independence from Britain until 1991. He's among the continent's few surviving liberation heroes. His also administrative assistant, Roderick Ngolo, said in a statement on Monday that Kaunda had been feeling unwell and had been admitted to Miani Masoko Medical Center in Lusaka. Well, that's what's happening on our international scene. Very much more of the stories there if you want to follow up. But not forgetting, I will not tire to remind everyone, every Ugandan out there, to do take care of yourself. COVID is real. It is with us, but we must also stage a fight and fight back through our SOPs, social distancing, at least wearing a face mask, sanitizing, avoid crowded places, and also take foods or at least anything that will help boost your immunity. We've been talking about fruits, lots of water, and for those who can work out or make some exercises, it is recommended. And speaking about those, do not forget to also get yourself a bottle of Hallelujah ginger tea drink and Hallelujah tamarind drink. Now, our song for today is up next, and we will have a break, have this song, and when we come back, Robert, Priscilla, and myself will be doing the newsreel. Good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by was brought to you by
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home, or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we love, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
Therefore, understanding this model. Hey, excuse me, lady. Who do you think you are? A queen?
Hey, haven't you heard? Get Airtel Chillax bundles and browse like a queen.
Get Airtel Chillax bundles that do not expire and browse like a queen or king. Dial *175# or use My Airtel app. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Thank you for keeping it on UBC TV, and this is where you must start your morning with us for reasons, because we make sure that you're well informed with what is happening both locally and internationally. But also for the sports lovers, Ruben is always here to take you through the world of sports. You get to know all those sports updates, and of course you also look at the print media. Welcome to our newsreel section part of it, where we look at a story as of national concern and we try to give it more analysis into that. Well, today I want to be focusing on the education sector. COVID-19 has led to life not being done the way we used to do it, and now the ministry has begun rolling out, that is, radio lessons on various radio stations to ensure that they carry out continuity, at least that the students could catch up with what they would be gaining in schools. This is not the first time. We saw this in March. However, for some time we got analysts and critics going into that. I'm with my colleagues here with whom we are going to be discussing this. Priscilla, this is not the first time. First, we saw government coming up with television and radio studies, but some said they are not all involving. A group of people are being left out, that are students who could not afford the radio sets. This time around, government, the Permanent Secretary has called upon, as Minister of Health, James Kakoza, says, support, give them time, give them the radio sets so they can carry on with the learning.
Okay, so when we carried from the genesis where it all started from in 2020, when the Ministry of Education and Sports was trying to find a way to actually settle the pressure that was being mounted on them by educationalists, by school owners, by students, by parents on what next for education in terms of COVID-19 being here, and it's going to be here for a while. And while they were, putting in as much requisitions and coming up with so many programs and strategies in how the education sector can actually continue amidst COVID-19 before schools reopen, one of the strategies they came out with was to perhaps have these programs aired on TVs and on radios, and UBC was actually airing some of these lessons. We would have teachers that would come and teach some of these classes. The challenge then, and is going to continue being, is that first of all, now 1 year later, you have schools that reopened, you have classes that reopened. Candidate classes reopened, they have sat for their finals. You have semi-candidate classes that had reported back to school, and then you had the middle classes there, P1, P2, P3, had also been meant to be reporting back to school last week. But because of what the president directed for the next 42 days, everyone now has to come back home. Now, that means that you do have clusters of students that had moved a stride and now have to pause and fall back on that stride in terms of education. When you look at the classes that had resumed, these classes have had to go back to zero because no sooner had schools reopened in February, then they closed in March. So they had literally had 1.5 months to be able to do studies, meaning that even if it was first term that was to be considered, they had not completed first term education. Now they come back into school system and they have to complete first term education. They are on pressure to make sure that they fit everything within the framework of the space of 1 year to be able to have this child promoted to the next class. Already, students themselves have lost a full year in terms of the classes. Even if they're promoted, they've still lost a year. So when you look at it from the angle of the Ministry of Education and Sports, yes, they're trying everything in their power to ensure that education can somehow go on, but they have to give consideration of the social classes that we have in this country. We have the elite of this country who are not going to have their children on TVs and radios studying these classes. They would rather hire private teachers to come home, do private tutoring and continue with the syllabuses as normal, which actually is much more recommendable or much more sensible, because that private teacher will be able to touch bases on each and every subject. But now with this new rollout program that was released yesterday from the Ministry of Health, it's only going to be covering SST, it's covering science, it's covering mathematics, it's covering Islamic religious education. Out of all the subjects that must be studied, it's covering so far P4, P5, and that means that the rest of the classes are left out. It's covering primary. What about secondary education? What about higher tertiary institute education? All those also have to be put in consideration.
Well, we know at least for higher institutions, more, for example, universities, technicals, they're using, at least they're going more on the internet and doing online studies. But Felix, education has a number of components. It's not just having time on radio and speak. There must be sometimes feedback, interaction. How effective is this radio teaching and learning of students?
Well, of course, Robert, we must be able to understand what is the purpose of or what is education per se. If you want to discuss the connotations that define education, later on you realize that there must be an element of learning. And learning, again, will be defined by knowledge acquisition that may be direct or indirect, that may be imagery or pictorial, that may be illustrative, just to mention but a few. The question is any of these things that I've mentioned above gained through this process? Let me be honest, and that is entirely my opinion. You see, education, we need not to look at education as a routine activity, but an activity that inputs knowledge or transfers knowledge that helps someone understand something and why they have to understand. For example, children in school must understand why, for example, what is science? Why should they understand, or why should they know about matters of science? It is not enough for us to just tell them that this is a fish, it has 3 parts, it has the what, this is a bone. There must be reason to education to make sense out of it. What these moves by the ministry are fairly okay, I would say. But what is the intention? Is the intention about learning?
The intention is continuity of learning.
Now, that's the problem. We shouldn't look at education as just like a routine thing that someone has to, the kids must be learning something. They can't be hoped, they must be learning something. They must be learning something. We are spending where we are not going to get anything. Honestly speaking, this has been tried. Do we have the results? Have we done some evaluation?
Is there monitoring and evaluation
yes.
of that?
Have we done some evaluation on how? Because we have done it before. There's nothing new. We have been having work printed in newspapers. Let's make an assessment. How many people are able to access some of these things? There was radio teaching. There was TV. But how? Let's make an assessment before we rush into spending more. There's nothing wrong, by the way, when kids are at home and they're not learning anything in terms of school.
True.
And I think that's where the misconception is, that people think that kids have to be learning, whether they are sleeping, whether they are playing, whether there are other things they can learn away from SST, away from, you know, Jupiter, away from
pie chart.
There are other things they can learn. It is easier for you to teach a child at home economics than teaching them mathematics. I went to see a class on TV teaching a child at home how to make a candle, because that is more easy and practical. Now, for when you tell a kid at home about the long distance trade, the Bachwezi, the Tutangoni, the Ibamba, they can't relate. Look at the environment. The kid is in a sitting room.
They can't relate. They can't call in to ask questions.
It is hard. And education should be about relation. That's why, remember when you used to be in classes, teachers used to burden and put some charts.
Yes.
That when they talk about a square, it is easy to relate because they can draw it somewhere. When they talk about a circle, a subset, a tree, germination, different types of dicotyledonous seeds, you would relate. Now, when education which you can't relate, there is no feedback, there is no participation.
Because even it's done within 25 minutes. Each lesson is 25 minutes, and then they move on to another lesson. And then there's no response. Plus, also the teachers have to be fast because they want to get rid of a lesson.
Because airtime is paid for.
Airtime is paid for.
We are only paid 1 hour. And all this.
Guys,
so I think I would want to say that I feel, and as a person, as a parent, by the way, let me also emphasize from that angle, I feel that we are acting on a panic mode, and yet we don't have to. Let us, if we are going to go TV, for example, what can we teach students when they are home? Not everything can be taught when you're home. I can imagine a chemistry class on TV. Chemistry class on TV, equation, what, I can imagine. Can you even get anything? You know, for example, about practicals.
If it was hard for you when you are in class physically,
how about when you're in TV?
Maybe also there's another element that I'm thinking out is, have we even trained? Because, okay, this is a decision that the ministry has taken. Have we trained our teachers? It is different teaching in a classroom where there's interaction, there's feedback, there's monitoring. This one is dozing, the other one is not paying attention, and teaching on media. that is radio, where you're not even seeing anybody. There isn't. Have we had these teachers being trained on how best they have been trained to ensure they carry out these lessons?
I think in terms of training, that is a given. A teacher is going to be a teacher. Whether they're using what mode of teaching, what medium of teaching, they're going to always deliver as a teacher should deliver. However, let's look at it maybe from the angle of the different classes that we have across Uganda, that Ministry of Education must put into consideration, that we have social classes that may not be in consideration of what is available. In terms of remoteness, there are those people that are deep down in villages that cannot reach newspapers, radios, TVs to access this kind of education. Whereas there are those who actually have access to TVs, iPads, but will not go for this kind of education because they do not feel it is the quality of education worthy for their children to consume, even if the pressure is on for them.
Now this brings me to what happened last year when we saw the Ministry of Education and Sports bring before Parliament, that was a budget of 336.8 billion shillings to acquire, that was 9 million radio sets to be distributed to families to ensure that they can carry on with this kind of education. However, Parliament rejected this, saying it was unnecessary expenditure because they believed, first, we're in a political time, so politicians were dominating airwaves, but they also doubted that the capacity of one of the local firms that were going to be contracted to produce these radio stations. So issue of access, radio sets, yes. Issue of access to, and also affordability, because some areas may not have electricity, therefore you either need to use solar or you need to have batteries. It's also another complex something that I think the ministry has to factor in now. Do you think they should go back to Parliament and have maybe these monies available?
No, because either way, who is the responsibility going to fall back on? Because either way, it is the parent, the guardian of the child that would have to be pressurized to supervise whatever is being programmed by the Ministry of Education. And you don't expect a parent who has no knowledge about SST to sit down with a one Gavi and help Gavi to understand, when you yourself as a parent are not knowledgeable about what you're sitting Gavi down to listen to a radio set. Also, look at it from the angle of concentration levels. The classes that they've rolled out, P3, P4, P5, concentration levels for these classes is still very, very minimal. Their concentration level, 10 minutes, they will need some sort of interruption to get them back into the mode to then continue with the rest of the class, which is not going to happen with the interaction of TV or radio for that matter.
This is where government, the PS, Ministry of Education and Sports, James Wakoza is urging the parents actually that please support, supervise, avail the sets.
But how do you support and supervise if you, the Ministry of Health, have not interested me, the end user, to actually buy into what you're doing? You see, this is what's happening, and Felix talked about it, that we're just doing panic things, that you're throwing things out there and you're expecting the country to consume it just because you have thrown it there. We're not dogs that you should be throwing such things around. The ministry should have a sensitization campaign if they want to go ahead with this program. Sensitization campaigns in communities, in districts, on local leadership levels, to be able to get people and communities to buy into this program so that they can easily adhere and maybe eventually benefit from what the ministry is doing.
Well, Felix, what could be the alternative ways to carry out this program? Because we've seen many times this program, the first time it was on, it received a lot of negative criticism. So now we're wondering, as government, as parents, how can we ensure continuity at such a time of the pandemic?
You see, Robert, and I must cause emphasis to this particular statement, that we must look at education beyond the boundaries of walls like classes. For most of you who have grown up in steady homesteads, you know as a matter of fact that the things you learned at home are many than the things you've learned at school, and that's a matter of fact. Character, skills, and also demeanor, personality, and courtesy are not things that we learn from schools. And these are things that define a wholesome person. They're things that we can still learn at home. That's why I'm saying, having known that education is a right, and that's by the Constitution, that it must be appreciated in terms of accessibility, availability, and also meaningfulness. Now, if whatever you're giving is not up to that point, it's as good as not. If it does not match up to that, it is not the best that you can give. What am I saying? What can we teach our kids when they are home? Let me tell you, if government is rolling out these things now, if they are talking about kids studying at home and what, be sure that probably we are going to be home for some time. What can't the ministry, because I mean we're acting on quick, can't they come up with a short syllabus for the kids at home in terms of things that don't have to be the normal things? For example, if kids are at home, let's look at the girls. What can they learn at home? As early as the age of 3, girls are understanding things. And all these things are relevant. You know, instead of us thinking that we are going to math, science, there are things, how about we come up with a short syllabus for this time? And that's a matter of fact. Let a teacher come on board. How many, I want to see a TV program teaching girls about baking, about, these are things they need also as life skills. Now, instead of you coming to pump squared, x 2y squared, x 2y squared. Find y. Now, find x, find 2, find p, p nefuka p, p. What about someone comes on TV and says, today we are going to have a lesson about baking a cake. Maybe an coconut cake, a banana cake. So,
which can be a practical, by the way.
And that can also help in financial times.
And parents can easily monitor and supervise this.
And even then they can learn
about square roots and all that. Yes.
Then someone after that lecture, after my lecture, someone says there'll be maybe Mr. X who will be teaching us about how to make a candle. Then after that, we shall have someone who will be teaching us about something we can do home, like simple gardening. Veranda gardening. This thing of chupi, the tutangoni, the Zulu, Zulu nafuka Zulu. So, what I'm saying is this.
Finally,
times like COVID, we can't think things are normal. Let us stop acting normal in abnormal situations. Let us try to come up with something that is saleable in times of COVID. If when kids are able to go to classrooms, they will learn. But when they are home, let's teach them things they can learn from home.
Clearly, Felix suffered from a lot of QPQ.
Finding the square root. Well, Felix with finding the square root, find x and all that. Yes, I agree with Felix that we must have something that will keep the children still learning, but also what is available now is actually what the ministry has put in place. What we can do for now is, in addition to you as a parent, your role in teaching these other very vital roles of a child, let's also be able to support this initiative by government, by the ministry. Find time, supervise, give it your best, because it's what has been available for now. But of course, not forgetting the other very vital lessons that as a parent you have to ensure your child is well versed with.
I can't wait to hear for people's comments of the QPQ, find Dory, find who. Comments on Facebook. We do have Zakia Bukenya saying good morning to you. Well, good morning to you, Zakia. Thank you so much for watching UBC. We do have Komaket Joffrey, and you are saying local medicine is good, but it can lead to either underdose or overdose, which is not good for our life. Well, thank you so much, Komaket, for that consideration. We'll definitely put it into action. Now, speaking of action, we now get to act on the papers and see what's making headlines ahead of the appointments that were made yesterday in Parliament and approvals. Then thereafter, we'll look into weather and climate after checking out the traffic on some of the streets within the capital of Kampala. Thereafter, we will be looking at our Good Morning Uganda agenda this morning. SOPs and enforcement, how is it looking like from the spectrum and perspective of some of the leaders across?
We have police.
And we do have police,
yes.
That is coming through. Yesterday, a story that I saw, Kabale, a shooting of a border guy trying to cross the Kabale border. Now,
they were saving him from getting COVID, yet they killed him.
Yeah, so you get it. This is what the country has become in terms of security and peace.
You survive COVID, you die of
it. Said, Felix, some of these things, yes, we could criticize security for not being professional, but also let's avoid putting ourselves in harm's way.
That's the conversation that Robert is going to be having at 8 a.m. So stick around. And later on, as Argentina was commemorating and remembering Maradona, we had Messi scoring. Ruben P. Machividago will be giving you those sports updates. Keep it to Good Morning Uganda.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Therefore, understanding this model. Hey, excuse me, lady. Who do you think you are? A queen?
Hey, haven't you heard? Get Airtel Chillax bundles and browse like a queen.
Get Airtel Chillax bundles that do not expire and browse like a queen or king. Dial *175# or use My Airtel app.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, every morning we make sure we spice up your morning by ensuring you're an informed person. So make it a day to start your day with us here on Good Morning Uganda, UBC TV. It's time we now update you with what is happening in the print media. The New Vision, a very big headline there, government sets tough travel conditions. Those seeking to travel must have negative COVID-19 tests certificate. So you must have done that test. And of course, you must be having a certificate as well. Still, Parliament approves Vice President and Prime Minister. Picture there of the Prime Minister and the Vice President. Teachers held in COVID-19 crackdown. Teachers. Is it curfew? Are they buzzed? The New Vision gives you more of that. Then demand for oxygen goes up. One of our stories this morning was about how Molago and National Referral Hospital, they are coming up with an oxygen plant at the hospital. And still in the education, we have 5 chemistry, mathematics, plus senior 1 biology. The New Vision has brought you that. Rare to construct power networks in 15 districts. More commitment in terms of rural, that is electrification in our country. Yes, Felix.
Well, of course, the Daily Monitor or Tafire there and businessman fight over prime land, and the Indian national accuses Internal Affairs Minister, that's designate, of ordering his military guards to destroy a structure under construction on the disputed piece of land that is overlooking Lake Victoria in Nyonyintono near Kampala. Now, we were non-traded, says Fast Pharmacy, and go slow on marijuana, doctors warn. Now, tears of joy as Bobby Wine men get bail after 166 days. Now, your later stories, birthday messages and puzzles and more there, and of course a lot of tenders inside the papers. Now, from the archives, we see a photo here where we see the Bank of Uganda Governor Emmanuel Tumusime Mutebile receiving a flag from Toro Kingdom Nyimba at the start of Oyo charity walk that was at Aga Khan Primary School in Kampala. That is in 2003. Now, Washington, today in history, Washington asked to lead U.S. Army, and Japan tsunami claims 22,000 lives. Now, of course, also in other news, NDA yet to clear local COVID drug, that is the COVID-X, I think, and LDC want audit into varsities teaching law.
In the New Vision still, we look at statistics. How are we standing as a country when it comes to COVID-19? Today we have new death stand at 6, and we have new confirmed cases 1,122. Total deaths so far registered in the country, 434 people have succumbed to COVID-19 in Uganda. Please don't be part of these statistics. Protect yourself and your loved one by perfecting the SOPs. Look at today in history. It was on this date, the month June 15th, the year 1993, when at the end of Kamuzu Banda's presidency. Know your member of parliament. Today we bring you, that is the New Vision has Mohamed Nse Gumire, that is MP Mitiana North constituency. We also look at Isaac Sejoba, Bukoto County Midwest. Those are some of the members of parliament that they have brought to your attention today in
now in
the
sports.
New Vision.
We'll be also looking at Olympic bound Namutebi Click and Bossa, that is Kembare, feted as UPL returns. Now Britain moves to walk further into Olympics there, and European Championship. We see giants Germany and France clash. And of course, how Gorola made the difference in Toro United there. And Sun complete sweeps Nugget, that is backs roll over Nets, and Neymar helps Brazil trash Venezuela.
Well, we'll look at the New Vision Sport, and that is the Copa statistics. We are rocked by COVID outbreaks. Copa opens in Brazil. Then we are good to go. That is 38 days to go to the Olympics, and we see the Rugby Sevens team with our flag there saying we're ready to go. Then still, that is the Euro 2020 statistics. There's a fixture there and the results for you. But remember, these and more, Ruben will be here to give you all the details and the catchy stories in the world of sports. Felix, very interesting. In the Daily Monitor, I had you read where people are being warned on the use of marijuana as one of the herbs or the treatments to COVID-19 and boosting the immune system.
Well, of course, I think the doctor did make mention of about if you do have it in excess, it definitely has its own repercussions and that are healthy, of course, danger, that pose danger to the health. So we must take care on some of these drugs like marijuana, because it has been known for other particular purposes. But speaking about other particular purposes, now we'll be looking also at the traffic. Now, the traffic lady is there to give us the updates. We don't know where and where she's going to bring us from, but we can't wait to know how to get to the heart of Kampala. And at least for some of you who are interested, who are morning movers, you know where to maneuver. A couple of constructions of roads. We've seen some of the flyovers, like the one we see around the one of Kalerwe. Then there's another one, I think, Achebando, around that side. And also Chisasi.
And of course, the diversions that come with some of these new constructions. But also importantly, I heard her talk earlier on about road signs. Many drivers today no longer learn through driving schools. I don't know, Felix, if you went to a driving school. They learn through a friend with these automated vehicles. One just gets to know the pedal and go, and they're set to go. So many people don't know road signs, and one would make a U-turn where the road sign is very clear. Not have a U-turn here. So one would park at a wrong place. One would overtake. Some would not master speed of some roads that is really labeled as road signs indicate. But these and more, we wait for Priscilla to give us our traffic officer here. Priscilla.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Robert and Felix. These conversations continue. Now, speaking of traffic, if you have noticed, Kampala has been empty. As of yesterday, there was barely any car. The usual times that you'd expect a lot of traffic have reduced, especially about 4-5 p.m. Now the traffic literally empties out of the heart of the city by 6 p.m., meaning that population has sort of reduced given the next 42 days that were announced by the president. Ever since then, there's a reduction of the population that is within the city center by daytime. Now, speaking of which, we want to look at some of these routes that are meant to be having lots of traffic, bringing in traffic from some parts of the suburbs of Kampala into the heart of Kampala. We get to look at this Usafi market area that is currently under construction, and every single time you will find that is a diversionary route that you did not leave in the morning or yesterday evening. So as of this morning, of course, now we do remember that there was a diversionary route here that moves from Entebbe Road and comes down the area of Katwe. Well, as we speak, that diversionary route has been blocked off and it's no longer accessible, meaning that you will have to come down and use this other diversionary route that steps into Katwe and brings you right at Finance Trust Bank. Then you can be able to go back and join Usafi roundabout and then get into the heart of the city. So that is a new diversionary consideration that you must put into mind when you are using this route and you want to access this side of town. That is Katwe, you want to access maybe the likes of Rubiri, going to Rubaga. That would be the option for you right now because this place is heavily under construction. Just remind you that the construction is focusing on creating a flyover within the heart of the city, and the flyover is going to start from Zambia. So Zambia is also having a serious diversionary routes here. Now this is usually a wide road, but it has been narrowed down and it has barricades that will guide the traffic, where you actually need to be observant of signposts. Now one of the signposts that they use in this area is a blue round signpost that has a white arrow, and the white arrow is pointing downwards. Now that arrow simply means and shows you that this is the alternative route that you must take, or this is the diversionary route that you must take. The other signpost that you might want to consider when you find a diversionary route that you didn't find last night or you didn't leave last night is a round red sign with a white dash in the middle. It simply shows you that there's no way through. Now that will let you know how to move from Zambia into the heart of the city, which is downtown Kampala on this end, or you move from Zambia onto Mukwano Road and then getting onto Kampala Ginger Road or industrial area for that matter. But keeping to downtown Kampala, when you move from Usafi and get to what is known as Queensway, cumbersome as always, the red zones into orange zones, but because of traffic officers that have spent 4 months in their new uniform, we get to see that traffic slowly being managed. So the red zones are actually smaller than they usually would be on a normal day, and simply because traffic continues to reduce within the heart of the city. Now this Queensway does connect you right on to Kampala Ginger Road. Now this connection is going to bring you, and it shows you that for traffic that is moving in from Kampala Ginger Road and trying to connect Queensway has some orange zones there, and the orange zones mean the traffic is really moving slow. If you want to save time, find an alternative away from this, because trust you me, this can be like 30-40 minutes, even 50 minutes of slowness, which consumes your fuel, and yet you have to be somewhere wasting your time. So find an alternative. Equally also, the traffic that is moving from Queensway onto the Entebbe Road, Kampala Road, you will see that it's also having red zones and orange zones, and that's simply because traffic routes here have changed for taxis. This used to be an alternative for taxis to go into downtown Kampala, but now it brings taxis out of downtown Kampala, connecting them to this route. There's also Siki Road that has been diverted. Siki Road used to be trekking traffic from Queensway into Nakasero, but now it brings traffic from Nakasero into Queensway. That's another thing that you must know if you're going to be using this area for your motor interaction. Around ShopRite, you get to see a red zone there because of commuter taxis that are making stage, getting people out and in for their next destination. You get to look at more of downtown Kampala. Around Mega Supermarket, you do have orange red zones building up because the old taxi park, which was meant to be reopened, has not yet been reopened by KCCA. Now that simply means that commuter taxis are still using the main roads as parking spaces, parking spots, to be able to also work, earn a living and put bread on the table for their families. In Owino Market area, where you do have the Mwanga 2 Road, you have the Link Bus Terminal, you have Namirembe Road. This area, you do have St. Barikudembe Market. You get to see red zones into orange zones, also simply because of the interaction of commuter taxis within this area. You have commuter taxis that will use the back route of Namirembe Road, they will use Mwanga 2 Road to get into downtown Kampala and also get into the new park. And then getting into the new park, meaning that this taxi is actually going to be causing a lot of traffic jam. So for those of you that have businesses downtown, the earlier you get downtown, the better, before the taxis actually close up on the routes. We get to see other red zones within Allen Road, around there, around Aga Khan Mosque. You get to see some red zones building up onto Mukwano route, which feeds into Chagwe route. All these are trade routes because now this is Chikuwo, this is downtown Kampala, where you do have lots of traders that are opening shop, lots of trading trucks that are coming, offloading and uploading goods to be able to distribute them accordingly, and that will cause a lot of traffic for downtown Kampala. In terms of traffic, given that bus terminals are now on a pause for another 30-something days, you get to see that there's not so much activity as expected, especially around the Global Buses terminals. You would be seeing lots of reds and oranges. At about this time, you would be having about like 4 or 5 buses en route at a go. But because that has been put on a pause, border to border, district-wise is off for now, you get to see that that is reducing on the traffic that usually builds up around these areas. Then you get to Bakuri, where you do have Namirembe Road cross-secting with Mengo and the likes. This, you only do have the red oranges because of the traffic lights there at Bakuli, but away from that, it doesn't look so bad. Sneak peek into the rest of Balintuma, into Chadondo Road. That is also another place that has traffic lights, so it would explain the red zones, but the rest of the route seems to be clear. You get into Namirembe Cathedral, coming down to Mengo Trading Center, also usually having a lot of red into orange zones, but surprisingly, this morning it's all clear. Around the Kenjoy supermarket, around Mengo Hospital, it all looks around Sapolo Kagwa. Schools are off for now. You do have Albert Cook Road all looking clear. Sneak peek into Rubaga. You also get to see that Rubaga, Kaweso Road, you have Nabunya Road. All these routes into Kawaka and Jagala are seemingly all green zones, meaning that there's traffic that is clear. You don't have to worry about jam, you don't have to worry about anything. You will move at the swiftest and fastest time. Now, speaking of swift, the weather is quite swift these days. We were expecting rains and showers continuously, but that has not been the case because of the climate change that is continuously happening, especially of the horizon of Uganda. Now, speaking of Uganda, we do have a Rift Valley fever that has caught animals in some regions of Uganda, and this is simply because of the change in climate. Molen Kenyana is here to help me and you understand how climate relates to some of these diseases that are now coming up in our livestock. Good morning to you, Molen.
Yes, good morning, Priscilla. And it's alarming, but not something that we should worry about. It is an alert for preparedness about the upcoming Rift Valley fever. So that is something that we need to look out for.
So what is the relationship between the Rift Valley fever that has been put out as an alert and the climate? And which regions is it actually affecting right now?
Yes, Priscilla, looking at our seasonal forecast for June up to September, we did have regions that posed as high risk for above normal rainfall. We are talking about much more rainfall compared to the rest of the country, that is northeastern Uganda. That is where we have the Karamoja region, and also happens to be the same place where we have more cattle keeping, and this fever poses more threat to our animals. So that is an area that is relating to now that Rift Valley fever that is being put up as an alert, and also parts of southwestern Uganda, which is where we're also likely to have more rains compared to the rest of the country. So that's the kind of relationship that is there as we talk about this seasonal forecast.
There is a farmer there who might be inquiring. They're new to livestock and they're wondering, is this Rift Valley fever a killer disease, or is it easily treatable?
Yeah, it is treatable. It is treatable. That's the good news. But still, it can be, because now there is treatment, yes, but we could lose a lot of animals due to this fever, especially if we haven't had a contingency plan or even much more preparedness towards this. So the alert comes in time, and it came out this June, just a few days ago, with FAO and IGAD countries' contribution to that, making sure that this alert comes up in time so that the farmers out there can get to know this information and also look out for what is likely to happen should this be confirmed across these regions.
Well, back in 2008, we had the breakout of swine flu that affected livestock, right from chicken to pigs, and a lot of those died. Actually, some of these farmers had to burn up some of their livestock simply as a way of controlling the outbreak of the swine flu then. We hope that this is managed in time as soon as the alert is received to the concerned parties and local leaders as well as the farmers. Now, away from that, Molen, we still continue to look at climate change, especially here in Uganda. What more do you have for us on climate change?
Yes, there is an increasing variation in our climate, and if you look at our day-to-day weather in terms of what we have been used to, you will notice there is a small change. And it is true that we now see indicators across the country. We see trends of temperatures increasing, and although we have a roadmap to an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius for the next decade, we still see temperatures likely to increase more than that, especially now that we've seen reports of increasing temperatures across the country and also across areas that usually relate to our climate here. That is, like we talk about the seas around us. The sea surface temperatures are also showing anomalies. We do see a lot of countries also globally looking at sea level rise. All these are indicators of the climate changing. And that does not affect just Uganda, but the entire world.
Speaking of affecting Uganda, just reminding you that COVID-19 is real and it's taking someone close to you. Do not be a part of the statistics. Make sure that you act on wearing your mask, act on carrying a sanitizer. I'm glad that today I'm seeing everyone having their personal sanitizers. You too should buy yourself a small sanitizer to carry in your bag, in your pocket, on your suit, and it will definitely save you today. And also ensure that you avoid crowding at all costs, because it spreads rapidly and you will not know. When you get to know, it may be dire and hard for you to actually recover from it, given the scarcity of oxygen. So please ensure that you act lest you perish. That is our message from us here on Good Morning Uganda to you. As the Molen continues, do get geared up for SOPs and how they're being implemented. The border conversations, the district closure is definitely also something that is confusing, especially commercial and market and traders. They're being confused by, these directives. So we're going to be having an expert giving us more insight into these directives in application of the different entities that are affected. But just remind you, you will have these updates coming up on our Twitter handle, which is UBC TV Uganda, and then on Facebook we continue to stream live on UBC TV as well as YouTube, UBC Television Uganda.
Yes, thank you very much, Priscilla, and giving us an insight of what we should do to avoid COVID-19. Now, yes, that is a global pandemic that we are facing right now, but something that is also in our hands to protect ourselves against it. Now, we want to avoid also the next pandemic, which is the climate change crisis. This is something that is now a catastrophe in the looking. So this is something we want to avoid. If there is something that you can do about it, plant that tree. We continue to urge also government to look out for the industrial processes that are a big impact in contributing towards climate change. I also want to avoid the next pandemic, I want to say, in Uganda. That is an alert for Rift Valley fever that has been put out. And I know the Ministry of Health, the Minister herself, Honorable Jennifer Cheng, actually watches this show. And a lot of health workers out there, this alert is already on their desk and they are supposed to look out for how we can have a contingency plan in as regards to what we can do to make sure our animals are safe. Now, we do have a report. This fever, we've not had documented response in terms of how it is transmitted person to person, but we do know that it is also related to mosquitoes that transmit it to animals, and also it can be transmitted through body fluids and blood. Now, the alert is showing the areas that are likely to have this impact more. We do have northeastern Uganda, which is where this is the area that we've had also a forecast for more above normal rainfall across this area. Now, when we look at the Karamoja region as well, extending to parts of northern Uganda, this is where we have the orange colors starting to form up. Now, these oranges are an indication of high alert areas where we are likely to have this fever develop. We also have this pink dot that is across southwestern Uganda. Now, this area has already been confirmed to be on high alert, close to 100% that this fever will break up around here. And we also have actually cattle keeping around this area. Now, mostly we want to look at the Karamoja region. We did give a seasonal forecast at the beginning of June that was also showing more rainfall that is forecast over this area. Now, the relation with what we're seeing here, also actually to the western part of Kenya, also it's the same Karamoja cluster is where we have a lot of animals here, cattle keeping, and also parts of Sudan that actually have more likelihood for this fever developing over that area. Now, how it is related to the seasonal weather that we experience over East Africa and the Greater Horn of Africa, we do see that most of these mosquitoes that actually transmit the fever are also connected to how much rainfall we receive over the area. So now, mosquitoes, they lay eggs. Now, for these eggs to actually hatch, there is need to have that conducive environment for them, and we are talking about mostly the rainfall. Now, it also comes at a time when we are saying if there is going to be a lot of rainfall in this area, most likely there is going to be a lot of mosquitoes also eggs hatching. That means that there is going to be increased likelihood of them spreading across the entire region. We're talking about the Karamoja cluster, and also for southwestern Uganda. So this is more alarming to our animals and for everyone into farming. Now, it also goes out to the Ministry of Health and also the health workers to put up a contingency plan in time. Now, this report has come to us in time from FAO and UN working with IGAD, an organization that is also looking out in terms of agriculture section across East Africa. Now, that means when we receive this information, we have to look out, inform the farmers, inform cattle keepers so that they look out for this, as it is likely to pose a big threat towards our region. Now, speaking of our region, we do still have a forecast for this week that is starting today, 15th up to 22nd of June. We want to look at the areas most likely to have more rainy conditions compared to the rest. We do have Uganda still in that orange zone alert and also the yellow alert that is coming in from ICPAC. Now, we have mostly Mbale still in that kind of yellow to green zone. That is where we're likely to have most rains pick up. Orange zone goes up to northeastern part of the country. That is across Karamoja. Central North, that is where we have Gulu, that is where we have Padel, that is where we have Kitgum. Those areas still likely to have rains as throughout this week and into the weekend. Now that also extends up to midwestern Uganda. That is where we have Masindi, Kabarole, Fort Portal. Those areas still expected to have rains as the week goes on. Now we do have the areas that are in plain white across Uganda. That takes in the Kyoga region. We do have central Uganda and also the Lake Victoria Basin, also where we have the nation's capital Kampala, Tororo there, Masaka. All these regions are in white zones, meaning that there is going to be a likelihood for reduced wet weather conditions across those areas. We'll have mostly in terms of sunny, cloudy conditions. Now, the Lake Victoria Basin usually has an exception because of the influence it gets from local effects. Now, the lake usually influences with the weather across the region. Now, we do expect mostly convective processes, and by convective processes I mean when you look at, you imagine warm air rising and then at a higher altitude in the atmosphere condensing into, that is forming clouds that do form our rains across the Lake Victoria Basin, which is why we're also extending this orange zone across the Lake Victoria Basin, likely to bring us rains throughout this week, but that will also be mostly isolated showers. Now, if you remember what I said about isolated showers, these are rains that do form over a few places. So you will find that in one area it's actually raining heavily, but just a few kilometers away you find that it's actually dry and still sunny. So those are kind of the isolated showers that are expected over the Lake Victoria Basin still as we look at 15th to 22nd of June. Now, speaking of which, we want to bring back our attention to what we have over our satellites for today, look at what we have across the country and also our forecast for this morning. Well, this morning we do have mostly cloudy conditions developing across the country. We're having that rain system that started developing actually from early this morning from the Lake Victoria Basin. And now that is extending all the way up to the western part of Lake Victoria, and that is also likely to bring in more cloudy conditions, most especially that is across Masaka. So you see that dark orange color where we have yellow and also where we have blue. That is what is showing us that rain system. Now it's also followed by the white, which is the only cloudy conditions but without precipitation. So that system will likely die off as it heads overland. Now it is still over Lake Victoria, but as it heads overland, most likely it will die off, bringing us only cloudy conditions towards the western part of Lake Victoria. We do have another rain system that is also developing, that is across the southwestern part of the country. This is where we have Kabale, Kisoro, still right now as we speak having mostly cloudy conditions and quite chilly weather as we talk about that advection from the southern winter. This is actually cooler than it is usually. Kabale and Kisoro, these are cool areas, but at this time of the year it is quite cooler than it normally is. So we do have that rain system also developing over there, but as the morning goes through, this will clear off, leaving mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Also across the Kyoga region, that is where we have mostly northern Kyoga, that is across Lira. We do have a forecast for rains this morning as well. That system is likely to stick around as the morning goes through, and that will be extending across parts of Nakasongola, eastern parts of Luwero as well, and also Nakaseke in that region. So right now it is bringing in mostly cloudy conditions that we're experiencing even as we speak across Nakasongola and the entire Lake Kyoga region, but that system is also likely to clear as the morning goes through, and we do expect more pickup of rainy conditions later in the afternoon. Now we also have still a rain system across midwestern Uganda. That is where we have Bulisa. Still it's coming in from Lake Albert towards the areas of Hoima, but that is also bringing us only cloudy conditions, nothing like rains across that area, but it will be developing more towards the afternoon. Now we do have one that is coming in to northern Uganda. This is where we are giving actually more attention in terms of rainfall this week. It will pick up, and we are already seeing that system developing even for today. We do expect it to land into Kitgum-Gulu. We also have a park in this area, Amuru. We're now having cloudy conditions over this area. but rains will be coming your way. Do look out for those this morning, and also into the afternoon we're likely to have more developing. As we look at our forecast for this morning, we do expect mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions across Kampala, Mukono, Entebbe and the rest of the central Lake Victoria Basin. Temperatures quite chilly at 25 degrees centigrade. That is where we have Wakiso as well. Looking at southwestern Uganda, we do expect also a mix of clouds and sunshine, but we will have much sunshine as the morning goes through. Temperatures will be at 26 degrees. That's where we have Rubirizi and Bushenyi as well. Now for the eastern parts of central, that is Ruwero, Wobulenzi, we do have Nakaseke, Nakasongola also in that category, where we have a mix of clouds and sunshine, but quite a warm 27 expected this morning. Now for the eastern part of the country, that is where we have Soroti, Katakwi, Amuria, Kumi as well. We do expect to have intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions, but those rains also in the forecast, that those will be coming your way as the morning progresses. Temperatures will be at a cool 26 for that area. Now looking at Mbale, Bududa, that is the eastern part of the country, most contributions are coming in from Mount Elgon across that area. That usually affects actually the weather conditions over that area. We do have a mix of clouds and sunshine, and at a very chilly 25 degrees over that area. Now we do have the western part of Lake Victoria, that is Masaka, Rakai, Sembabule and Kalisizo. We do expect also sunny intervals, that is cloudy conditions mixed with sunny conditions. Temperatures will go up to 26 degrees centigrade. Now also the central part of northern Uganda, that is where we have Gulu, those clouds already developing, and those will be bringing in rains this morning. Temperatures will be quite cool compared to what we've been dealing with lately. They will be at 25 degrees centigrade. And also Gulu, Kitgum falls in that category. Now that is the forecast we have for you this morning for most areas within the country. My name is Molly Kenyina. I will leave you with Good Morning Uganda that is coming up. That is the agenda. You do have more discussions as we head into the morning. We will have later sports and Good Morning Uganda Extra. Do stick around. You can also follow us. We're streaming live on YouTube and also our Twitter handles. Have a good morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
In chess, the small one can become the big one. It's the same here. And here too. Watch every move. Record every number so you can plan better. No matter the size of your dream, tomorrow's success belongs to those who keep today's records clean. File your returns today.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Ballet dancers are known for dancing on the tips of their toes.
Tiptoe.
It sounds as if on...
And told him, Afande, there's also this other venue where people are merrymaking as if there's no COVID-19. He moved into action, and there and then an operation was carried out and many were rounded up. Afande, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Would I say you're more busy than ever before, or this partial lockdown, you've now had some moments to relax?
Actually, it is something that we have gotten used to. In the beginning, you remember last year, around March, there were a lot of SOPs to be enforced. And currently, we cannot compare the last lockdown to what we are having right now. So I would say it is not like it was in the beginning. We are not relaxed, but we are alert and are waiting for any issue that may arise.
Let's look at enforcement, which is our topic this morning, but also the role of police here. One would believe that the public would understand the gravity of the pandemic and comply, but actually some do not do so. So let's look at the enforcement bit from the police perspective.
Well, enforcement, as usual, has not always been something easy. We are enforcing these SOPs, working with other sister security agencies, and in particular the UPDF and LDUs. And during our enforcement, of course, we always find people who wouldn't want to comply, not because they don't know, but just because they don't want. We have the HE himself has at all time come out to caution border riders, to caution people operating bars, and we have at all time come out to amplify on his message, and hoping that when we communicate that people will of course hear these messages. But a few people are still not complying with these guidelines. There are those that of course are operating bars till 3, and we have also gotten this information that currently some of them even close themselves inside and float these guidelines. At the end of the day, they come back home, spread COVID, and that's the cycle of all things. Of course, like HE said, they are working on a document that of course will entail fines, and it wouldn't be necessary to arrest anyone and put them in courts of law and later on prison. But currently, since that document is not yet out, the enforcement we are doing, if you are arrested for continuously violating these COVID SOPs, you are arraigned in courts of law. And last week, those people that were arrested from garage and levels were arraigned in courts of law and remanded. I'm told they're supposed to come back in court on the 17th. So that shows you that we are still doing arrests, and we are still enforcing, and whoever continuously violates these SOPs after warning them continuously will be arraigned in courts of law.
You mentioned the word warning them continuously. What are you referring to here?
Of course, there are places where we find people floating guidelines. We come, disperse the groups, and caution them so that they don't engage in such activities. There are places of businesses where we find people floating guidelines, and we warn them. So if you're caught in the same act the following day, we will not warn you. We will take you to courts of law, because we have realized that it is actually you're making that you're floating these guidelines, not because you don't know, but because you don't want. And that is how some of the people that were arrested last week was not the first time those bars were raided. We would raid, disperse everyone to go back home, but if they continuously did it, we would arraign them in Kosovo. Yes.
So far in Kampala Metropolitan, since the President's address 2 weeks ago, do we have statistics of how many have fallen victims, or how many, have been arrested in these operations?
Well, as of yesterday, we gave statistics of the whole country. We informed the country that 3,400 motorcycles were impounded in the whole of last week. Over 2,000 people were arrested in the whole country, and over 300 motor vehicles were impounded. And the motorcycles impounded and motor vehicles impounded, we always release them after issuing the owners of these motor vehicles with express penalty schemes. In Kampala Metropolitan, to be particular, we have arraigned in courts of law in the past week since the President spoke. Over 2,000 people. Over 2,000 in Kampala Metropolitan? In Kampala Metropolitan.
That's a big number.
Yes, and some of them were given fines by the number that was actually the 86 who were arrested in the middle of last week were arraigned and later on taken on remand. That is the only group that was taken on remand, but others were given fines in courts of law.
Well, that explains why you should desist from a bar as you speak. Please, not only for your health purposes, but also think of the inconvenience you're going to cause to people once you're being nabbed. Afande, what has been the most challenging bit of this enforcing these guidelines?
The challenging bit, like I said, the challenge always comes back to the persons who are supposed to be adhering to these guidelines. We all, the president, when the president was giving his speech recently, he said that these guidelines should not be limited to police alone and the army and other security agencies. Each and every one of us has the sole responsibility to guard himself from COVID by following these SOPs. At the end of the day, when you get these diseases, it will not be me who's suffering, it will not be my son, it will be you and your loved ones. So it comes back to us. So the first challenge is the public not adhering to these guidelines, especially now that we have issues of not crossing borders, and we are facing a lot of challenges on that part, where people are ferried and dumped somewhere, move on foot through porous borders, come out somewhere, maybe there was already a communication made on the other side, the car waiting for them, and they move. So that is a big challenge. We have tried to deploy accordingly, but of course the other challenge also comes that we are not enough. You know, we are not only limited to enforcing COVID SOPs. A lot of people are still doing their work normally, some of them, and we still do register a lot of cases. We are doing operations, sting operations in many places, and arresting other criminals, not specifically the ones that are violating SOPs. So there is still some limited manpower to man those porous borders that lead to other districts. But nevertheless, we have tried. We have used what we have efficiently, and people are being arrested for trying to cross over, and others are being cautioned. Many of them are being cautioned to return back. But of course, when you're cautioned, they will still find their way back. Then also, we do have a challenge of the public, not ideally. Some of them try to work with us, others try to keep quiet, and there's also a challenge of a lot of corruption and bribery that has been faced with many of our officers, and some of them, of course, engaging in it. And that, of course, is a very big challenge, not only to us, but also to the people we serve. Because at the end of the day, when an officer is bribed, they will not uphold the law, and there are consequences in the end. And currently, we are dealing with COVID, and whenever an officer is bribed during this time, there are challenges of maybe the person has bribed spreading the disease to another person. So those are some of the challenges we are facing, but we are finding solutions for them.
Well, on a lighter note, talking about bribes, there was also a tweet where people would think, just a joke, that a police officer who will not make money in this time will never get rich. But anyway, that is just regarding corruption, and you've mentioned that you accept, yes, you have this problem. So how are you addressing it? Because at the end of the day, you find that the integrity, the image, but also it loses value if I know that maybe I just have to have 10,000 on me. In case I run into a curfew operation, I'll just give an officer 10,000 and I'll be gone.
Well, first of all, we are addressing it by making sure that we deploy not only the officers that are enforcing these guidelines, but also an overwatch force that will look over these officers that are upholding these, enforcing these guidelines, to monitor how they work, and also 24/7 on our mediums, where people report cases of corruption, so that we can always respond. There are cases that are always reported on social media, and we have always responded. There are cases that are reported in our through phone calls. We have always responded and called the officers, some of them where we find the allegations true, reprimanded, and that is how we are doing it. But other than that, it is something that is not easy to fight, where currently we have people that are actually supporting some of these vices. We saw on social media people posting the passport of moving from one border to another, and they put a 50,000 note. So that shows you that some of the people we are serving actually support this kind of vice, so it becomes a little bit hard to fight in the process.
Also, we want us to focus on these operations. Yesterday, we got information from Kabarore. I know you don't speak for that, you're with Kampala, but I know you can have a comment. Where we saw a border who was shot and a life was lost. We've seen even within Kampala Metropolitan where border riders, I'm not a police officer, of course, but I know.
Yes, even in Kampala Metropolitan, last week on Saturday, one of our officers was stabbed continuously at a checkpoint. So we do get such
So
cases.
I want us to focus on these operations. As we prevent a life from contracting COVID-19, they are violating. If that life is short, they have not died of COVID, but still we lose a life. Two wrongs don't make one right. But also on the side of police officers, I know one at Ginger Road who was knocked, dead, one lost a leg. So let's look at these operations. What is not working out very well sometimes?
At the end of the day, like I've been telling you, we are serving persons who are likely not to adhere to these guidelines, and of course it is expected. But of course there should be mechanisms in place to make sure that that is addressed, and one of them is making sure that the people that are being deployed are briefed on what to do, not to use excessive force whenever they face resistance, because of course I don't speak, but I watch the news, and according to what some of the people were saying, that the rider knocked the army officer while he was trying to stop him, and after knocking him, the person retaliated with a gunshot. So that shows you that whatever job you do as an officer, you will face resistance no matter what. But how are you going to come out of that situation? Are you going to use excessive force? Maybe he could have shot the tire, maybe could have radio called in front for the person to be stopped, other than taking a life. So there are lessons that are learned in the process, but at the end of the day, crimes are committed on both sides, and there should be ways of making sure that whoever is deemed responsible, either the border rider or the officer himself, goes through due process and is taken to courts of law. That is it, because we have at all times made sure that we brief our officers whenever they are faced with such challenges. But like in the case of Katwe of recent, rather Chiwiye, where our officer stopped a rider and told him that you're riding beyond the stipulated time, which was at his motorcycle was impounded at 8 in the evening, and the rider just responded by pulling out a knife, stabbing the officer continuously, and the officer is currently fighting for his life. So that shows you that there are challenges that are in work, although also the public, of course in the process he also stabbed a member of the public, a civilian, and the public pounced on him and killed him. So that shows you that there are challenges that we are faced with on both sides. The officers themselves face some challenges where they are injured, and also some of our officers use excessive force, which is not necessary. Sometimes there are always solutions how issues can be handled without losing a life or shedding blood at the end of the day.
We're with Afande Luke Owesigire, who is the police spokesperson for Kampala Metropolitan, trying to give you more information regarding COVID-19 enforcement, but also just remind you that it is your responsibility. Much as police will enforce this, but it is your own responsibility, because at the end of the day, it is your life, the life of the loved ones, the people you've left home that you're going to infect with COVID-19 should you contract this disease. I want to ask you a question that usually many people want to understand. Curfew is one of the areas that puts police in the spotlight. But what is the relationship with the spread of COVID-19 and curfew? Because most of the times, police will enforce, but because the public do not understand the reason behind the enforcement, they don't comply.
Well, it is not there for anyone to understand. Some of these guidelines are easy to understand, like washing hands, like putting on masks, social distancing, they're pretty much easy to understand. But the instance of curfew was basically to curtail, because some of the guidelines that are hard to enforce would happen at night. Imagine we didn't have curfew, people would be frequenting bars. People would be having functions in the night. And that is when a lot of activities like drinking, boozing happen, and it is hard for you not to follow these guidelines. And in the work in the beginning, the fact that a lot of people, apart from the fact that a lot of activities that are deemed illegal may happen at night, there was also fear that the fact that people are not working, some people may take advantage of this and also try to work in from other people's houses to earn a living illegally. And that is, I mean, housebreaking and burglary. So there was a scare that such ideas would come up, and also the fact that some of these activities that are deemed illegal, like bars, to curtail a bar, it means you must have a curfew. Because no one would want to go in a bar okay, there are people who would not mind going in the bar during the day, but many of us would not want to go in the bar during the day because we have work to do. But if there is a possibility of not working in the night, you would go there, because there is no other thing that is stopping you apart from making the law that you shouldn't be in a bar. But if you have the possibility of moving in the night, it would be okay. So, and at the time, we were living in such a time that you wouldn't know what would happen tomorrow, who would die, who is spreading this disease, and we need, it is something that has really worked for law enforcement, because it makes it easier, it even makes the work lighter a little bit. I imagine an officer is controlling traffic the whole day, traffic the whole night, and he's supposed to, at the end of the night, to go and enforce these guidelines. So it is not something for the public to understand, but they should know that it has really helped a lot to calm down this disease, because at the end of the day, whoever is found moving beyond curfew time, we wonder, where are you coming from? Maybe you're from flaunting guidelines of COVID-19, and you have to explain yourself very well where you're coming from. Of course, there are challenges that we meet. A lot of people come out and complain. They increase the corruption allegations, but I would want to say that curfew has really helped a lot in the fight of COVID.
We know, apart from enforcement, also police to take on sensitization. Most of these times, what methods, how are you carrying out this, or are you mainly focusing on that is arrest and the coerciveness bit of it? Well,
we have at all time had this disease. It is coming now to 2 years that we are faced with COVID. In the first, when we registered this disease in the beginning, we did make a lot of sensitization campaigns where our CLOs, PROs would move on radios, markets, and sensitize the public about these dangers. And of course, that is work of government, but we took it upon ourselves to make sure that the people we are going to enforce these guidelines to, and with, know what it means. If you are arrested floating the SOPs, what happens to you? We need to let them know that you pay harder than if you're found violating these guidelines, rather than following the guidelines. So we had to educate them, we had to inform them the dangers, and some of the government officials who come out to communicate on air, most of them use English, because that is a universal language. And we would go back down to the people and interpret the messages from our leaders in government in the local language, which the people would understand better. So that is one of the issues that we relied on. And during this second lockdown, partial lockdown, we are still doing the same. And I want to categorically inform you that other than arresting people who frequent bars, because that guideline has always been there, other than arresting people who other than arresting people who are moving beyond curfew, moving on motorcycles at the time that they are not supposed to move on them. The new guidelines that were brought back by HE, the president, we are educating people more. Like this issue of crossing borders. We are not arresting people, we are just informing them. Apart from those we find using porous borders, those are being arrested but later on released. As we await for the guidance from the Treasury, and of course when that guidance comes out, people will be given fines at the end of the day.
Look, also the president mentioned issues regarding burial and public functions, restricting the number. This is one area that we receive reports where it's being violated. To what extent? How are you as police handling it? Of course, we know death is something that involves emotions as well. But we are seeing increased numbers of COVID-19 death, but also people seem not to be very critical in this particular element of burial and how they the vigils and all that.
There is still a challenge. At the end of the day, the DPC or the OC will not know that someone has died in their community and is going to be buried. He might not know if the death is natural. If the death is not a murder, if the death is natural, the DPC might not know. And we are having a lapse in communication from our local leaders who are also supposed to enforce these guidelines with us. If you see a group of people gathering, planning to go for burials, more than 20, it is upon them to be informing us. But we get this information when it is already late, people have already gathered, maybe the person is being put down there, but where we have gotten information, we have policed the barriers. And I'm not saying people are not burying in Kampala, but where we have gotten cases of people going to bury, we have made sure that we have policed where we have gotten to know, because you might not know how many people have died in your area. Very true. Because some of these deaths are natural.
Well, still looking at the COVID-19 standard operating procedures, the SOPs that were put in place by His Excellency, of course, with the Ministry of Health to ensure we combat the spread of COVID-19. And I'm with Luke Owesijire, who is the police spokesperson for Kampala Metropolitan, who usually gives us information of what is happening within Kampala Metropolitan. Look, the public, there are those that are appreciating what you're doing, but there are those that still believe you've not done enough. You've mentioned working together with the local councils and the public. How should we engage with police?
Well, doing enough has never been the issue. We can never do enough. No one will ever do enough. Even the little that government tries to do, people will say nothing is being done. And that is expected from the human perspective. But at the end of the day, COVID, like I said in the beginning, it is not something that should be left for police alone. We do have our challenges in enforcing it. Like I informed you, manpower. Some of the resources are very limited, but we are working with the limited resources that we have, and to make sure that we enforce these guidelines. That is why it comes back to us. Information is very critical in enforcing, where a lot of people, like in the past, during this new lockdown, people have always come out with information. Our social media inboxes are always flooding with messages informing us that this bar is violating these restrictions, and we have always forwarded the messages to the commanders and made sure that they act very fast to make sure that nothing that goes against the guidelines is being violated. So as long as the public gives us information, and which of course they have done this time around, we will respond. We will respond and make sure that no one is violating these guidelines. Where the public also turns a deaf ear, decides to keep quiet about what is happening in their surrounding, it will become hard for us. Because as you all know, we are not quite many. We are a force of 50,000 now on a population of 45 million Ugandans. So that shows you that we can never be
not anywhere to the international level, that is ratios
standard. If you combine even the soldiers that are available we are not more than 200,000 people in security. So that shows you that there is still a lot of work to do with working with the public, and the information is very critical.
Finally, on operations, look, we've seen police, LDUs, and the military. Where a person will tell you, I was arrested by the military, I was arrested by police. Now in these operations, who takes precedent? We've seen sometimes LDU canes a person on border, then, so who takes, you know, for the public to know, where do I report in case of a violation? Who handles what?
Well, in case of any violation, it should be at the police.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the DPC is in touch with the commander of LDU or in touch with the commander of the military police. So it should be police, and the police will liaise with our sisters to make sure that we identify who violated you. And that person is identified, they handle them in accordance to the laws that, of course, govern their institution.
Hello, Kowesejire, that is a police spokesperson for Kampala Metropolitan, and we are looking at enforcement of COVID-19 stops in our country. We must remind you that, yes, it is your responsibility as a responsible Ugandan to comply. But why you do not comply? Of course, the coercive forces of the state will come in and enforce you to comply with these guidelines. Now look, we know arrests are being made so far. Fines, we've not yet gotten the list. Of course, there are some moving on social media, and I want to get this clarification from you. We see some rates for border 100,000, for this 20,000, and this in one way maybe could promote corruption. I want you to clarify on this issue as well.
Well, like I said, the Treasury has not come out with a detailed way of how we are going to move with fining the members of the public who violated these guidelines. Currently, like I informed you, we are only doing operations on the guidelines that existed before.
Before, yes.
Not the new guidelines like crossing the borders that are currently available, but the guidelines that existed before: social distancing, enforcing and making sure that converge together, and also making sure that people are not moving beyond curfew. And those that are arrested during those operations are taken to courts of law and are issued with fines. All remanded, whatever court decides. But at the end of the day, even though they are remanded, they will be issued with fines to be let out of those prisons. So we are only using currently the court system of issuing fines as we await on the Treasury decision on how we shall issue these fines. But the papers, the posts moving on social media, having our logos, those are not ours. We came out and also informed the public that we don't know them, and we are only presenting suspects to court. It is only court that has the mandate to do that currently. And of course, even though those fines come out by the Treasury and you're issued with that fine, and you're not in support of being given that fine, you have the right to contest it in courts of law. So even though the Treasury comes out with those fines, and an officer gives you a fine of 200,000 or 1 million, whatever the cost will be, and you don't support issuing that fine or you're contesting it, you can always go to courts of law, and proof is brought on board, and if you win the case, you don't pay the fine. If you lose it, you pay the fine. There is
so you choose imprisonment.
You choose whatever court will decide.
Well, look, let's also look at the safety of both the police officers and the suspect. Remember, even if you're nabbed past curfew time, you still remain as suspect until proven guilty by a competent court. Now, COVID congestion is one issue, and much as people are arrested and they are put at police stations, they still have the right to be alive. How are you factoring in the lives, the health of the people that are being arrested in this operation?
Well, it's good that you've said as any suspect, rather anyone arrested is a suspect until proven otherwise. And we would want to say that we are really mindful about the people that are arrested and on how they stay when they are in our custody. We do acknowledge the challenge of having enough custody places. Actually, that is one of the reasons why we don't carry out operations very often. That's why we carry out operations a few times, because in most cases our custody is always full. And the fact that some of our stations some of our stations don't have custodies for children, and in most cases even children have been found violating these guidelines. So we find ourselves cautioning these young ones, although they are also sometimes a headache, making house parties, making a lot of violating a lot of guidelines in the past, but we have found ourselves cautioning them because we want to concentrate much on the adults. So we are very mindful. Whoever is accessing our custody, we make sure that they are given, or if they have a mask, it is not taken away from them. They wash their hands, and their temperatures are taken. And whenever we notice any person who has been taken into our custody suffering from or having a sign or symptom like a cough, a flu, they are isolated and taken to our clinics, which are most cases at our major divisions. We do have clinics around there. And if possible, if the symptoms persist, we do have these hotlines from the Ministry of Health. Samples will be picked, and these people will be tested, and if they're found positive, in most cases you have seen us closing down police stations in the past because a lot of COVID cases were registered. So that shows you that we are mindful on the people that are actually in our custody, and also the officers that actually work with those people, the suspects.
Let me have your final remarks regarding enforcement. Of course, you know that cases are increasing day by day. There is a surge. As the enforcers, let's have your final remarks.
As the enforcers, what we are calling upon the members of the public is at all time to work with us, because this is the only way we are going to have a reach in those communities where people allege that other members of community are floating these guidelines. So communication is key, and local leaders are very important in this fight, because that's where most information comes from. That's where members of the community will report first, and response will be taken. I've seen a lot of districts taking up initiatives or working together, not allowing other members from other districts to cross over. It is a good way of making sure that members of the public are together, connected, and having a same objective of course, currently making sure that COVID doesn't spread. So let members of the public work together so that we can finish this kind of pandemic out of our places of work and our places of residence. Because when we don't work together, we shall at all time face such challenges, and COVID will take a couple of days or years to fight, and it will, of course, keep taking our loved ones if we are all not serious about it.
Well, thank you so much, Afande Luke Owesigire, who is the police spokesperson for Kampala Metropolitan. This is all done to protect your life and your loved ones. Please let's comply and cooperate with police to ensure that all those that are violating these guidelines are brought to book. Stay safe. COVID is around, COVID kills, but we know what we can do to prevent death. Perfect the soaps, boost your immune system, and you'll be good to go. I'll leave you with Ruben Pima Kaseda, take you through the world of sports. Then Diagenda will be here. Have a lovely day. Stay safe.